Hey y'all, it's Laura. Welcome back to another Coco Vanilla Studio Design Team video. This one is using the beautiful new Heart and Home collection, and I was super excited to bring in this rainbow background paper. It is absolutely stunning. I love a good rainbow stripe. It's one of my favorite papers in any collection. Because this beautiful stripe allows you to bring in so many of the colors from the collection very easily and in a very cohesive way, which I really like in my layouts. Now this is kind of reminiscent of my kind of outside of the box version of pocket scrapping that I used to do. I used to do a style of pocket page scrapping that it was pocketless page scrapbooking, if it's what I called it. And I do have a playlist of layouts like this that are essentially taking the concept of pocket pages and applying it to layouts. In that I was just essentially collaging pocket cards, journaling cards, and photos and embellishments in a sort of grid-like fashion, but it wasn't your standard grid. It was more of a collage. It was making all of the bits and pieces fit together. And I really enjoyed doing it, but it can be kind of a lot on a layout. And over time, I've realized that I like this style better when it's a bit more contained. And so quite often I will create a square and then work within that square, or a circle, a shape, doesn't really matter what shape, and just work within that shape. And I think I like that look a little bit better. But I do still have that playlist if you'd like to check it out and see more layouts like this that have this sort of modified grid that gets a little wild, gets a little crazy, and it's a lot of fun to do. So I always start with my photos because those are the largest pieces on my layout. So I want to start with the largest pieces first, get them into a rough idea of where I want them to go. I will go ahead and mat them. Again, I want to make sure that I know exactly how much space they're going to take up on the layout before I start adding bits and pieces to it. Now, this is not a rigid design by any means. It can go over the lines that you create for it, and I often enjoy doing that, having a couple of small things sort of overlap the lines and just give it a little bit more of a continuous feel, a little bit more of a whimsical freeform feel, instead of following the rigid structure perfectly. And so that is certainly an option for you. I decided to do two of my photos with this beautiful kind of a green tone. It's a very soft green. And then I'm going to bring in this really lovely kind of peach color. And I think these colors here's the thing about Coco Vanilla Studios collections. Because Australia is on the opposite side of the world from the United States, quite often every time our seasons are opposite. And so I find it fascinating how Zoe manages to create collections that work for both the North and Southern hemispheres. And so when she comes out with designs like this that have kind of a mix, I find it really interesting and really fun to use. So there's a lot of icons in the Heart and Home collection that have a very fall feel to them, things like pumpkins, things like leaves, that for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we associate with fall, or autumn if you're if you're outside of the United States. I do love the word autumn. I just forget to use it. And then there's also some things like the color scheme of this collection, which is very soft and it's pastels, that really speaks more to the spring side of the seasonal spectrum. And that fits a bit more closely with the Southern Hemisphere. And so it's really interesting to see those two themes kind of intersect and how Zoe was able to make those themes work together. This collection has been so much fun to use already. I've done 2 layouts with it now, and it is so versatile. That's one of the things I love about Coco Vanilla Studios. It's so versatile. And you can honestly use these collections for just about any layout. As long as the colors work with your photos, you can definitely dive in and make it work design-wise as well. So the basis for this design is simply to fill in the gaps. I put in my larger photos first, and then I'm grabbing some bits and pieces, largely cut aparts from the Heart and Home collection, to fill in the little spaces in between and create a more or less grid shape, but obviously it has more of a winding, whimsical pattern, and this is where I allow myself to have some fun. I am going to bring in some florals, and this is where we're going to go slightly outside of the grid just a little bit to soften that linear look with these rounded florals and those little hearts. But I also wanted to add a little detail to this particular page because I felt like it needed something that wasn't papery. And as you can see, it's pretty much all paper at this point. And so I really wanted to bring in something that would add some texture and some interest and make it a little bit more fun. And so I decided stitching was the way I needed to go with that. So once I got everything taped down, I did go ahead and grab my T-square ruler and my little paper piercing tool. And I think it's called an awl. AWL, if you're curious. But this particular one was from a Paige Evans bookbinding kit that she had a long time ago, and I have used it for bookbinding, but I use it more often for this. And I really just wanted a couple of straight lines to do some stitching and add just a little bit of that texture I was talking about to this layout. So at first I was just going to do these 2 lines here underneath of my photo on the right and above my photo on the left and fill in those gaps just a little bit more. But I do come in underneath of that heart at the top right, underneath the banner, then the heart, and I add a small line of stitching there as well, simply because I wanted a third place of stitching on the layout. I do like to do things in odd numbers just because our brains find that a little bit more interesting. So I am going to pick up some, I think I went with some variegated thread that kind of changes colors and it kind of shifts from one color to another. Now this one is a little bit more subtle. I would put it more in the ombre feel than I would necessarily fully changing colors because it's very subtle. It goes from a light blue to a slightly medium blue. And then I think I pulled in a yellow and a peach color as well. I'll have to see when it switches to the finished product because I did this layout a while ago. Quite often I pre-film my videos so that I have time to do a voiceover and any sort of editing, and in this case a blog post as well. So make sure to go check out the blog post at cocovanilla.com.au, and here is the finished stitching. So I did go with blue, green, and yellow, it looks like. And yeah, I really like how this came out. I like how that little bit of stitching added just a little bit more detail to this layout. Now bringing in my T-square ruler again, I am drawing in some lines to kind of rein in my little grid design, and I love how this one turned out. It didn't take very long to do at all. Outside of the stitching, it probably took about 30 minutes, and I really didn't have to plan much in the process. I just kind of made it fit together. Now, if you would prefer to have the square drawn ahead of time, and you would find having that linear barrier prepared ahead of time, absolutely you can do that part first. I didn't do that because I like having a little bit of flexibility with my grids, and by leaving the lines to the very end, I could move and shape my photos and embellishments to form the square before drawing it in. It's just the way that my brain works. It tends to work from the inside out and not from the outside in. And that is absolutely how this layout came to be. Now, adding some little faux stitching marks in a couple of places just for a little bit of interest. I'm going to add some lines to this little cut apart piece. This came from the A5 paper stack, which is the smaller stack of papers, and I really like that size because you get a little taste of all of the papers. And so if you don't necessarily want to add a ton of new things to your stash, this little paper stack is nice because it gives you just a little taste of the collection, and you can pick up some embellishments and a little bit of taste, maybe 1 or 2 of the bigger papers that you absolutely love, and you've created kind of a little mini kit of the collection. And I think that's just enough of a taste that you can really make a few layouts with it and have a bit of fun. Finishing this one off with some scattering and splattering, I am going to be doing my scattering with these beautiful, soft, puffy hearts. Absolutely love these, and scattered them around the page as well as into my clusters. I really, really like adding a little bit of a non-papery item to my layouts. This is something you'll see me quite commonly do with puffy stickers, with stitching, sometimes with mixed media, sometimes with chipboard, sometimes with wood veneer, but there's always almost always something on my layout that isn't just paper. And I think that variation makes the paper page a little bit more interesting when I'm scrapping it and a little more interesting to look at later as well. So I would encourage you to step outside of the paper every once in a while, even if it's just enamel dots. You'll be surprised at how much that small non-papery item can change the way a layout looks and feels in its finished form. It just feels a little bit more polished. And to give it even more polish, I'm going to add some splattering in 2 stages, one with some Nuvo drops for a controlled splatter, and then I'll come in with some gold ink spray for an uncontrolled splatter. But that's it for this one, guys. I do hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out the blog at cocovanilla.com.au for more scrappy inspiration using Coco Vanilla Studio products, as well as their Facebook group at Coco Vanilla. I absolutely love the way this one turned out, and this collection has been a joy to play with. Until next time, bye y'all.